Good morning. Welcome to All People's Church Unitarian Universalist. My name is Julia Sexton, and I'm your co-celebrant this morning. Our Sunday service is a shared time of worship for all present as we gather for music, spoken words, reflection, and inspiration as a religious community. Let us come together in a spirit of compassion and respect for ourselves and others. We especially welcome those of you visiting today and invite you to sign in at the visitors table near the front door if you haven't already done so. That way you can be placed on our mailing list to receive our weekly emails and the monthly newsletter. Excuse me. Before we proceed to worship, here's a couple of announcements. Remember that this Saturday, September 30th, we're having an electronics recycling in the from 9 to 12 in the parking lot. We're also looking for folks to staff a table to give information about the church during that time. Again, that's 9 to 12 on Saturday the 30th. And there is a fee if you have computer screens that you want to recycle. Another, can you attend the Fort Worth ISD School Board meeting this Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. to defend libraries and the right to access books? Sign up or get details from Jane Collins. A remembrance of the life of Christine Chapman is today after the worship service at 12:15. Feel free to get coffee and refreshments and come back into the sanctuary where we will reconvene for the memorial. This morning we welcome to the pulpit Dr. Kendra Weddle, who is the scholar in residence at North Haven Church in Dallas and who has been with us on several occasions. Kendra lives in Irving with her husband Brian and their chocolate Labrador retriever Rue. Welcome back, Kendra. And now, please settle comfortably for our musical prelude.
I invite you to read responsively with me. I'll read the first line, and then if you will respond in unison with the words in italics. Maybe not. I'll just read it all for you. Oh, sure. That'd be great. Julia is going to respond, so that's wonderful. Thank you. Sacred mystery is always on the move.
We want to pay attention, to be on the alert for her loving presence.
Sacred mystery is always on the move.
In ordinary places and in newly discovered spaces, they are always reaching out, hoping to find us open to divine revelations.
Sacred mystery is always on the move.
May our glad surprise inspire us to love more fully, to care more deeply, to advocate for justice more intently.
Sacred mystery is always on the move.
No matter where we are, how far we travel, how tired we may become, God's abundant love is more than enough. We invite you to rise and embody your spirit for the lighting of the chalice, the opening hymn, and the spoken affirmation. Our chalice lighting words today come from the Oberlin UU Fellowship in Ohio. We light this chalice to find inner peace, love for one another, and faith in ourselves. Also to be welcoming to whomever we meet and kind to all living creatures. So gather around this light, gather around this light of hope, and share this time together. Our hymn of the month is number 368, Now Let Us Sing. So now let us sing, now let us sing. Affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to the end
Others in community,
to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another. You may be seated.
I don't see any children in here, so let me invite you. Yay, we have one. Do you want to come up? Okay. Fair enough. I want to remind all of us that this weekend is Yom Kippur. So our Jewish siblings are celebrating Yom Kippur, and so this is our opportunity to celebrate as well with reflecting on the year in the past and our lives going forward. So we, as a culture, tend to celebrate, we kind of tend to use the new year as the way to kind of reflect on the past and to set New Year's resolutions. I'm not necessarily going to encourage you to set New Year's resolutions if you're any if you're anything like I am, I kind of don't keep those past January 15th. So I stopped that long ago. But I do think that there is something good with us setting an intention to live meaningfully with each day. And so I just invite us into this Jewish celebration this weekend to do that as well. And so as we're thinking about what that might mean for us, let's sing together as we leave this friendly place.
This morning's offertory words are by Elizabeth Murphy. All People's Church leaders, both volunteers and staff members, work diligently through the year to be careful and attentive stewards of the congregation and its funds. Meetings, reports, and budgets are all necessary to maintain the health of any organization, especially one that has endured for generations. But the gifts we make to our weekly offering or through our annual pledge represent far more than lines on a spreadsheet. Your contributions are a tangible commitment to the mission and vision of this congregation. Each time you give, you renew this commitment, and as a result, your support is entwined in all that we believe and all that we do here. It is our custom to share the undesignated cash offerings that are collected each week with a nonprofit or charitable organization. Eastside Community Assistance is this quarter's Share the Plate recipient. In the spirit of trust and generosity, we gratefully accept the offering. Will the ushers please come forward? Will you stand and sing with me hymn number 139, Wonder Still the World Shall Witness.
Still
seated. Our reading this morning is a Hindu story, and I've taken it from the text edited by Sister Joan Chittister in her book called Welcome to the Wisdom of the World. This is the story of Ganesha. Shiva, the mighty god of both destruction and joy, lived high up in the Himalaya mountains with his beautiful wife, Parvati. Sometimes life was not so much fun for her. Shiva was often away years on a time, and his usual business of creating and destroying the world, dancing on top of the world to keep it going, often kept him away. On one occasion, Parvati did not know when he might return, and she became bored. There was not much she could do all by herself on the mountain peak. So on this particular day, she was feeling unusually lonesome. Finally, the perfect solution dawned on her. I will make myself a baby. She cried with happiness, I will make myself a baby boy. So Parvati found some clay and water, and she pounded the clay until it was soft and pliable, and then she began to shape a baby. The first form she made looked a little too ordinary, and it wasn't cuddly enough. So she began to add some clay to his stomach until it was fat and round, and then she laughed to herself. She was beginning to love this baby already. She put the baby in the sun to dry, and soon he opened his eyes and began to smile, and Parvati was overjoyed. She had found the perfect playmate. She cooed to him and talked to him and spent many hours laughing at his antics. Several years passed this way. One day, Parvati took her son for a long walk, and they came to a pool of water. She was hot and tired, and so she wanted to stop and bathe in the water, so she placed her young son on guard and said, "Don't let anyone come near the pool while I'm bathing." And so the roly-poly boy sat down on this large, flat stone while his mother made her way to the refreshing water. Just then it happened that Shiva was finally returning home, and he heard splashing and was about to walk toward the water when he found himself stopped by a fat little boy. "Don't go any further," the boy ordered. Well, you can imagine Shiva was not accustomed to taking orders, so he brushed the boy aside, but the boy resisted and fought back. Shiva's anger began to mount, and suddenly, without warning, he drew out a sword and cut off the boy's head. Parvati, hearing all the commotion, slipped into her clothes and rushed toward the boy, and she let out a scream and fell, sobbing, to the ground. Shiva realized he had done something terrible, but he didn't know what it was. What could he possibly have done that upset her so? "You have murdered our child." She was hysterical. "Our child? You say I've killed our child? We don't have a child." "Of course we have," Parvati said. "We have a child because I made one. And I made one because I was lonely, and I was lonely because you were away." Well, she was unable to be consoled, and Shiva was distraught. What could possibly be done now? So Parvati said to Shiva, "Go out in the forest with your mighty sword, and I want you to cut off the head of the first living creature that you see and bring it back, and fit that head onto our child and give it life. That is what I want. If you do not do this for me, I will never speak to you again." Well, Shiva went racing out into the forest with his mighty sword looking for a living creature. Tragedy of tragedy, the first living creature he saw was an elephant. He could only do what he could do, so he cut off the elephant's head and dutifully brought it home. And there he fitted the head onto the child's body, breathing life into it as he did so, and waiting to see his wife's reaction. To his surprise, Parvati began to stroke the child's trunk, and the child began to laugh. This boy, Parvati discovered, was, in some ways, even better than her first creation. Shiva sighed with relief. By this time, he was beginning to become fond of the child himself.
At this time in our service, we pause to honor and give time and attention to those things most important to us. We gather here for healing and for peace in our hearts and in the world, and honor our time together with the shared stories and news from the congregation. Each week there is a journal outside the entrance of the sanctuary where you can write a message of memory or hope. Also, at any time during this service, you're invited to come up to the chancel and light a candle in our meditation area. There are no entries today in our book of memory and hope. So let us hold in our hearts the circles of concerns and stories told and those beyond our immediate, told and untold, and beyond our immediate community. Please now settle comfortably and join in the exercise of silence for reflection, meditation, or prayer, holding our sorrows and celebrations in a spirit of love and gratitude and forgiveness. Following the silence, Misha will lift our spirits with music.
Thank you, Misha. few weeks ago, back to school pics were all the rage on social media. Did you see them? It's that time of year when people ask their kiddos to pose in their new clothes, standing in front of the front door with wide and excited and anxious smiles as they head to school for another year. It's also the same time that people respond to these photos with phrases like, "How is this possible? Where did time go? They look so much like you at that age." It's a paradox how we mark time, stopping it momentarily to capture the precise moment before a new school year gets real, and also remind ourselves that life is over before we know it. This instant brings great joy, but there's also a wee bit of sadness, or at least discomfort, that what at one time had seemed timeless now is slipping away at Mach speed, and there's nothing we can do to slow it down. Time is such a complicated thing, isn't it? Sometimes we beg it to go faster, like when we're in the dentist chair listening to the drill spitting out tooth fragments. And other times we want to drive a thick peg into the old mechanical clock, its hands marking time, in order to bring it to a full halt. Someone mentioned to me recently that as humans, our main struggle is really about time. We either have regrets about the past that consume our attention, or we are planning for the future. We struggle to be in the present. And if we examine what we're really doing, we are giving over our actual living, which happens here and now, to situations in which we cannot change or control. The past is gone, and even if we wish we could return to it and do something different, say more or less, do more or less, there really isn't anything we can do about it, and the future is also beyond our control. We are imagining what might be, but our active imagination does nothing for what will be. And the unfortunate reality is that while we are ruminating about the past or planning the future, we're missing out on now. I think this is one of the reasons that I love Ganesha's story. Parvati encounters a life that feels empty to her. So she does something about it. And she doesn't get it right. Her first attempt, the narrator tells us, was too ordinary, not cuddly enough. I think this means she realized that she needed deep connection, and so she tried again. I imagine for most of us, or at least for me, we need more than one do-over. We seem to get things wrong, or I seem to get things wrong time and time again. How often do we leave a conversation and wish we had said or not said something? Or we work hard to make a meal for a friend, and in the end, the thing we invested time and effort in making lacks something more than just a dash of salt will help. Or even more, maybe we went to the wrong college, or we chose the wrong major, or we decided not to go to college at all, or now we wish we had. Or maybe we always wish we had moved to another city, or perhaps another state, or maybe a different country. Or maybe we ended up with the wrong partner, and we didn't figure it out until the untangling kind of stole too much, and we struggled to move on. And now years have piled upon years, and we feel stuck. But Parvati, she gets it right. Maybe that comes from knowing herself, trusting that she knows what she wants. But then, of course, life sneaks up on her too, when her partner destroys everything that she's created. We've been here, I think. We work hard, investing time and money and talent to, let's say, create a vibrant community in which we find love and acceptance, kind of a lively conviviality that comes from having and sharing many of the same doubts and faith. And then somewhere along the way, in the need for that vision to be translated to another place or another generation, we learn that the doubts and visions have changed. How do we go on without feeling disappointed, discouraged, dejected? Earlier this summer, I decided I wanted to foster a lab with a Labrador Retriever organization. And I had done this a few years ago. And so I decided to work with the same organization again. And I was ecstatic when I picked up this beautiful chocolate girl that would stay with me until I found her the absolute best permanent home. She was sweet and docile and had the most beautiful and soulful eyes you have ever seen. And even though it broke my heart when I left her with her new family, I felt grateful to participate in a process that resulted in creating a really good life for her. So fast forward to earlier this week. I decided, well, I'll just foster another dog. That was so much fun. So I learned that there was one available Monday, and mid-afternoon I drove to the veterinary clinic to pick her up. She was a little older than the previous one, but she was not nearly as sweet or docile. Instead, she was anxious and excitable and very large and very strong. And I don't think she even knew what hesitancy was. Once we were home, I quickly realized I was in over my head. I don't have a large yard where a dog can freely roam and explore. And I have to be a little careful about my joints, especially my neck that I had surgery on earlier this year. So it didn't take me too long to realize that this little foster experiment was not going to work out well. And I felt like a huge failure as I drove back across the Metroplex the next day to return her. And I was thinking about how discouraged I felt as I drove her back when Parvati came to mind. Before, when I've thought about her story, I've passed over the turn in the narrative, probably because that's what the narrator wants us to do. But in that liminal space between learning what she had lost and seeing what was returning to her in a completely different form, she clearly had to dig deep to get to the place of acceptance. She had created a perfectly perfect child who she loved. And she was clearly irate when she learned her husband had destroyed that child. So how did she prepare for that son's return? She surely couldn't imagine what the new situation would entail, right? An elephant head on her little boy. So she surely had to do the necessary mental, emotional, and spiritual work to be a mother to a new and different son. When of all things her son returns to her, changed, no longer as he was, but now with this big elephant head, somehow she finds joy and laughter, even with this new version. She came to embrace a transformed reality. I sometimes think that we struggle to accept change because we live in this kind of fantasy world where we think we have control. We finally succeed in getting something like we want it. The house is perfect, the bank account feels secure, the job makes me feel valued, with just the right amount of challenge. Maybe the faith community I've invested in is vibrant and exciting. It's a place where I belong. Whatever it is, when we think we've arrived, we want it to stay that way, don't we? And I think that's at least in part because we think we can control it. We've been successful. The Buddhists tell us that when we look at life with the desire for it to stay the same, we bring suffering upon ourselves. I recently read a memoir by Dr. Edith Eger called The Choice. At the age of 16, she was sent to Auschwitz. Hours after her parents were killed, a Nazi officer forced her to dance for his amusement for survival. Later in 1945, she was pulled from a pile of corpses when the American troops liberated her camp. One of the themes that she articulates so clearly in her memoir is that in every moment we have a choice to make. We can be grateful for what we have, or we can lament what we've lost. I'm getting old enough to know that life is one big lesson in learning how to let go. When our bodies begin to let us down, when our relationships crumble or kick us in the gut, when our jobs don't pay the bills or they turn out to be places of toxicity. So much of what we dream about when we're young turns out so differently, and we have to make peace with all of life's disappointments, perhaps as much as the happiness. Edith writes in her memoir, the problem and the foundation of our persistent suffering is the belief that discomfort, mistakes, disappointments somehow signal our worth. The belief that the unpleasant things in our lives are what we deserve. There's this branch of theology that posits that divine mystery is always in process. In other words, just as we are always in process, responding to new situations, changing circumstances, no moment the exact same as the one preceding it, the same is true of divine mercy, of divine mystery. She responds to us, listening, leading, whispering, laughing, dancing, crying, moving with us as we walk through life's journey. This way of envisioning the divine embraces an organic, malleable image as opposed to some kind of static, complete one. It says instead that we influence mystery, shaping her just as much as she influences and shapes us. It's an eternal dance, seeking to be in step, moving together. It's a responsive relationship where each movement is an opportunity for openness, a genuine curiosity about how we will employ a unique dance step together. I think we can see this dancing with Parvati, who had to learn to love a dramatically different boy. And if you know something about the Hindu deity Ganesha, you know that that figure with the elephant head is one that teaches several helpful and practical tips. Listen more than you speak. Be gentle even in your strength. Trust that even when life leaves its painful mark, you can heal, and that process can do its alchemy to make you wise. Michael Bernard Beckwith, the founder and spiritual director of Agape International Spiritual Center, teaches that we are vibrational beings. That is, we vibrate, just like all other life forms. We're not just solid material, we're always moving, always vibrating. When we lift our vibration to what we want to experience, he says, it happens first at a vibratory level. Then it shows up in our lives. If I become the vibrational frequency of love, harmony, peace, then love, harmony, peace will show up in my life. Oscillation, waves, harmonious motion, divine mystery on the move. Divine mystery moving in you, moving in me, moving in us. What are we capable of when we become aware of this energy moving within and among us? How much better can our corner of the world be when we live into this possibility? Mystery is on the move. So let's dance with her in ever-expanding circles of love. Amen. So let's continue to think about this dancing or perhaps marching as we sing together our final hymn. And if you will, stand with me, hymn number 1030, We Are Marching.
The extinguishing the chalice words come from Amy Zucker Morgenstern. Never has it been more true than now. We extinguish this flame, but the sparks within us remain alight. From each of us in our supposed solitude, the signals buzz and hum, sparkling through space, one to another, connecting us invisibly but palpably. We are one, and from every window our light shines.
I want to invite you again to remember that you can pick up a cup of coffee and a little something to nibble on, and then come back in about 10 or 15 minutes for the memorial service. And I want to invite all of us as we go forward this day to dance or to march in light of the divine mystery. Amen.
So may it be.